How many friends have you made today? Chapter 14. How many friends have you made today? Anon looks to the small chariot with 2 Pegasi strapped to it. It seems that the time for his return is already in motion. He looks over his shoulder and finds Blue Blood, Celestia, and Luna behind him, doing various things. Celestia is busy talking to Blue Blood while Luna is loading the chariot. Anon walks over to the edge of the chariot landing zone and looks down the mountain Candlelight sits upon. He wonders if Celestia and Luna would notice if he jumped right now, but he shakes his head. Those are just his emotions talking. He can't stop the swelled feeling of fear and concern filling his very being. His mind is in overdrive. He's trying to think about how everything will play out today. There's just so much that can go wrong in so little time. He wishes that it would all just go away, that he'll be able to return to a somewhat normal life in the home that he built. He rubs the back of his neck in thought, his mind going back to the long discussion the 2 sisters had with him. Everything is planned. That's all he can think of. The entire process was talked about and broken down. He still can't believe some of the things Celestia has in store for the elements. Not only that, but there's also a few things that she kept for him as well. She assured him that it would be necessary and the elements would learn a lesson that they would never forget. He trusts her. It's all he can do in a time like this. He doesn't disagree with the ideas that they shared with him. They seem like fair punishments, all things considered. Luna even came up with a few when Celestia couldn't, and Anon didn't find himself objecting to the ideas either. The entire thing works well when he thinks about it, yet practice is always different from the real thing. Like the old human saying goes, "No battle plan survives first contact with the enemy." He turns around and walks over to Celestia and Blue Blood. Blue Blood seems rather confused as Celestia whispers something to him. He gives a hesitant nod.
I understand,
he says as Anon approaches.
I'll be counting on you, Blue.
Celestia gives him a smile. Is it time to go? Anon asks. Celestia looks up to him and gives a nod. Anon walks over to Blue Blood and pats him on the head a few times, unsure if it's to comfort Blue Blood or himself. See you, Blue. Blue Blood gives him a nod just before he walks back into the castle. Anon, Celestia, and Luna get into the chariot. It's gonna be a long flight back to Ponyville, but Anon has the feeling it'll be shorter than it will actually be. The chariot lands in front of Anon's home. So, here he is, back in Ponyville. Well, at least he'll get to rest for a few minutes in his own personal castle. Anon gets out of the chariot and notices something off about his home. Why is his door open? What the hell? He whispers as he goes to investigate. Celestia and Luna step out of the chariot behind Anon. They take notice of his open door as well, and follow after him. Anon can hear the sound of something tossing around his stuff, and he feels a spike of anger as he walks into the living room. However, what he finds leaves his mind drawing a blank. Bonbon? He asks, stunned. There, tearing the place apart is none other than Bonbon. When she turns around to face him, he notices her brighten up considerably.
Anon!
She jumps towards him and tackles him to the ground. Her hooves are wrapped around his neck as she starts to cry. What the hell is going on? Anon yells as he tries to pry this hysterical mare off of himself. Celestia and Luna come galloping into his home after hearing the disturbance. Celestia quickly uses her magic to pull the mare off Anon. She isn't too sure what's going on, but she is gonna find out. The mare in her magic seems to freak out some as she waves her hooves around in shock. Once she realizes that she's being held by magic, does she calm down a bit. She looks around and finally notices Celestia. She shrinks a bit at the hardened gaze that she's receiving from the princess. Anon gets up and dusts himself off. He walks over in front of Bonbon, and she turns her gaze towards him again. Alright, 2 questions. Why are you in my house, tearing it apart, and why are you crying? Anon spoke neutrally. The mare tries to reach out to him, but Celestia keeps her still.
Anon, I've been worried sick! You didn't show up for work for the past few days. When I asked every pony around town if they'd seen you, they just ignored me.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Bonbon is a bit of a worrywart when it comes to ponies, or people in this case, that she cares for. Alright, that explains the crying part, but nevertheless I would like to know why you're tearing my stuff apart.
I thought that maybe you were pony napped, so I came in here to look around a bit and try to find any clues. Lyra's in your bedroom searching right now.
Anon stiffens up some as those words register in his mind. She's not serious, is she? You let her into my room. Bonbon nods.
Of course, she insisted.
Celestia watches as Anon closes his eyes, taking a slow breath in through his nose and then released it out of his mouth. He opened his eyes and looks to Celestia, a single finger held up to signal that she should wait. He walks out of the room and towards the stairs that lead to his bedroom. He wishes that whatever his mind is picturing is wrong, but he has a feeling that he won't be that lucky on this day.
Anon!
Celestia hears another mare's voice, followed by a long pause.
This isn't what it looks like.
Celestia feels herself become concerned as she hears the sounds of a struggle. However, she holds the mare in her magic while she waits. Luna isn't too sure what's happening, but it doesn't sound as if anyone is being harmed. Soon enough, a completely red-faced Anon and a damp-looking mint-green mare come walking out of the back room.
What happened?
Luna asks, a certain smell permeating off of the mare. She then finds herself remembering the time Anon and she entered the dream of this pony, a blush now growing on her muzzle. Bon Bon looks to Lyra, shocked.
Really, Lyra? I thought we had to talk about this.
Lyra looks away from Bon Bon with a massive blush. Celestia takes a whiff of the air and the scent. She reels back some as her face becomes red. She clears her throat to try and ignore the smell of stress relief. Alright, so you were worried by the thought I was taken by someone. I really appreciate that, Bon Bon. Anon says, ignoring what he just witnessed in the place that he rests his head at night. I'm sorry I didn't leave you a note, but I was kind of in a hurry. Celestia gently lowers the mare that she's holding to the ground. She now understands that this is the mare that hired Anon. She then looks over to the mint green one, her eyes narrowing some. This was the mare in heat. She holds back her own reaction, and Anon already made it clear that he saw no reason to punish Lyra. In fact, he absolutely refused to even humor the idea of punishing her. Celestia has a feeling it's mostly as a form of thanks to his employer. Bon Bon cautiously walks up to Anon.
I was really worried. Every pony acted as if you just disappeared.
She frowns a bit at the thought.
Many of them probably wish that were true.
Anon lets out a sigh. Bon Bon, while angry at him when they first met, kinda became a sister type to him, always worrying about him and defending him. He can't fault her for just worrying about his well-being. He gently rests his hand onto her mane as he strokes her some. Yeah, I know, but I'm back now. Anon looks around the room. Actually, how about we get comfortable?
That would be wonderful.
Bon Bon says, casting a disapproving glance towards Lyra. Lyra chuckles nervously.
Yeah.
Anon waves everyone in the room to follow him. He walks over and falls onto his couch, sitting directly in the center. Lyra tries to rush over to one seat, but Anon snaps his fingers loudly at her, catching not only her, but everyone else's attention. She looks at him as he points to another couch that sits directly across from him. She lets out a sigh as she walks over and takes a seat. Bon Bon shakes her head some, but sits next to Lyra. Celestia takes her seat to the right of Anon while Luna sits at the left. They both get comfortable against Anon. Anon leans back some and spreads his arms across the back end of the couch, enough so that he can idly pet each princess absent-mindedly. Lyra on the other hoof is practically screaming on the inside about how lucky the princesses are to have Anon petting them. So, how's the store been holding up? Anon asks as he tries to relax a bit. Bon Bon looks away from Lyra and smiles at Anon.
Those new candies that you made are starting to really get popular. When are you gonna tell me the secret to making them?
Anon feels a grin cross his lips as he looks over at Celestia. A grin that she can't help but mirror. You know I can't do that, Bon Bon, he says, and she lets out a huff.
Fine, keep your secrets. So where have you been?
She looks at both princesses.
Business, I assume?
Anon rocks his head back and forth. Something like that.
Are you gonna leave again?
She asks. Anon felt his mind rolling back to yesterday. He probably won't be staying here after this. He wouldn't be surprised if he got lynched if he dared to stay. I'll probably head out again, but don't worry, I won't be gone for long. He assures her.
Alright.
Bon Bon says skeptically. She looks to each princess as she feels her nerves start to kick in.
I think Lyra and I need to head on home.
She feels a frown overcome her as she looks over to Lyra.
We need to have a discussion about boundaries again.
Anon gives her a nod, no change in his neutral demeanor. Bon Bon doesn't waste time in getting off the couch and walking towards the front door. Lyra looks to Bon Bon, then over to Anon. She blushes heavily as she chuckles nervously. She gets off the couch and pauses. She leans over and nuzzles his knee in a flash just before she takes a step back.
See you later, Anon,
she says quickly before she follows after Bon Bon. Both Celestia and Luna feel their eyes narrow while they track that mare. Once she's out of their sights, Anon lets out a long sigh as his head falls into his hands. I can't believe this. This is the third time I'll need to change those sheets, he says to himself.
Third time?
Celestia asks. As far as I know, he says, rubbing his face some. Celestia decides not to linger on this issue. Anon seems rather stressed as is. Perhaps they'll talk of this problem after the day's over. She doesn't want to overload him with so much. Anon's hands drop from his face, and he rises from his seat and turns around to face the princesses. So, you two want some tea? He asks. He then looks to Celestia. It's been a while since we did that. Celestia feels a smile overcome her.
That would be lovely.
Anon waves for them to follow as he walks into his kitchen. A certain nostalgic feeling takes over him. He walks to the cupboard and pulls out the tea kettle. He fills it with water and places it onto a stove just before the fire flickers to life. He could swear that it's been years since Celestia and him shared a nice cup of tea together. He looks over his shoulder, a small smile present. And Luna's here too, which makes it all the better. Celestia feels her heart warm as she notices the smile Anon is giving them. She must say that she likes how familiar this entire scenario feels. However, her sister is here and that makes her heart warm even more. Luna looks around the kitchen that she sits in. She will admit that this is the first time that she'd ever entered into Anon's home. She'd always wanted to come here, but she held back as did not push him too much. She is definitely glad that she can share in a moment that her sister and Anon have shared many times before. Anon sets the table with everything as the water comes to a boil. He then makes each princess a cup of tea, but he hesitates some with Luna's. "Just a lemon wedge in yours, right?" he asks Luna, and she smiles brightly at him for having remembered a conversation that probably took place months ago.
You are correct.
He gives a nod as he cuts a small slice of lemon and places it on the saucer. The teapot starts to whistle, signaling that the water is ready. Anon walks over and picks up the pot and heads back to the table. These small actions are actually calming him more than he was expecting. He feels as if he's back in his old life, his only worries being when Celeste would show up and his late night talks with Luna. As he stands near the table, readying to fill each cup, he can't help but feel peaceful about everything right now. That is, until he realizes that his vision is turning purple. He looks to Celeste unsure as to what's happening, a small amount of dread building up inside of him. Celeste. In a flash, Anon is no longer standing there. The pot that he was holding falls to the ground with a crash. The two princesses look to where Anon was standing just moments before. Time stops for both of them. Luna's the first to react as she jumps out of her seat, shouting in her canterlot voice, "Anon!" Celeste is the next to respond. Her body seems to react on instinct as she processes everything that she saw. Anon was teleported in a purple aura, and there's only one pony strong enough, other than herself and her sister, that can teleport a creature as unique as Anon to another place. She looks to her sister.
Come, Luna.
Celestia doesn't wait as she lights up her horn. If she acts fast enough, she can create a link with the teleportation spell and teleport herself and Luna close to where Anon was taken. In a flash, she and her sister land in the middle of town square. Celestia looks around frantically for wherever Anon could be. They don't need to look far. Only a few yards ahead of them, and Celestia spots something that makes her heart race and her blood boil. Anon is being held tightly in a purple field to telekinesis. His heart rate is peaking and his emotions are unstable. She can feel him screaming on the inside, but the outward appearance of him is devoid of all emotion. The elements are surrounding him, all of them wearing their jewelry. At this moment, Celestia feels something snap inside of her. A feeling that pales in comparison to when the leader of the Griffin Kingdom took her last slice of cake. Basically, she's livid. I wonder how this is going to turn out, because obviously this is much worse than before. And come to think of it, some of the elements actually like Anon, so there's a lot more conflict going on than just the princesses and Anon versus the elements as a whole. So who knows what'll happen. Anyways, let's get on to our heroic donators. Top donators: Peter Coulthard, J Tin Man, Darkside, Gauntlet, and only one thing. TacoCat598, Zar630, Strix, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Austin Roland, CrazyKiller557, Stu Hex, Will, Omicron Lyre, Dospo, Delta Omega, Jack Edge, RuneSlife9852, Madman Stan, Leslie Prickett, Hanson Norman, Stephen Bingham, LineGod12, Sorcerer Constantine, Hud Zaza, Lifegiver, and many more supreme people. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and live life to the fullest.